After 20 years of marriage, my husband looked me in the eye and said, "Jennifer, I don't feel anything for you anymore. I want someone who makes me feel young again." Her name is Amber. She's 28. 28. Younger than the length of our marriage. And what he didn't know was that the moment he said those words, I stopped being his wife and became his worst nightmare. Hello, beautiful souls. This is Voice of Auntie Katie, and I'm so grateful you're here with me today. To my loyal subscribers, thank you. Your support, your comments, your shares, they mean the world to me. You are the reason these stories reach the people who need them most. Before we begin, let me speak a blessing over your life. Wherever you are right now, whatever burden you're carrying, I pray that strength finds you. I pray that you recognize your own worth, that you see yourself as the masterpiece you truly are. I pray for peace in your heart, wisdom in your decisions, and the courage to choose yourself when the world asks you to shrink. May this week bring you unexpected joy, unshakable confidence, and the clarity to walk away from anything that diminishes your light. Amen. Now, if you're ready for a story about betrayal, revenge, and the sweetest kind of justice, one where a woman reclaims everything that was stolen from her, then settle in. Hit that like button right now, and make sure you're subscribed to Voice of Auntie Katie, because this story? It's about to change how you see loyalty, love, and the lies we tell ourselves. Let's begin. At 55 years old, I thought I had figured out what love looked like. Love looked like waking up at 6 in the morning to make breakfast for a man who barely looked up from his phone to say thank you. Love looked like 20 years of ironed shirts hanging in the closet, arranged by color because he preferred it that way. Love looked like dinner waiting on the table at 7 o'clock sharp, still warm, still perfect, even when he didn't come home until 9. Love, I believed, looked like sacrifice. My name is Jennifer Hutchinson, and for 2 decades, sacrifice was my religion. I met Robert when I was 35 years old. He was 38, confident, ambitious, with the kind of smile that made you believe in second chances. I had been a photographer back then, a good one. Not just someone who took pictures at weddings, but an artist. I had gallery showings. My work had been featured in exhibitions across 3 states. Critics used words like evocative and haunting to describe the way I captured human emotion. I remember the day we met. It was at a corporate event where I'd been hired to photograph the executives. Robert was one of them, middle management back then, but hungry to climb higher. He approached me during the cocktail hour, champagne in hand, and said, "You have an incredible eye. The way you see people, it's like you capture their souls." I fell for him that night. Not just for his words, but for the way he looked at me like I mattered. We were married within a year. "Jennifer," he said on our wedding night, holding my hands in his, "I'm going to build us an amazing life. I promise you that," and he did build a life. Just not for both of us. The first year of marriage was beautiful. We lived in a small apartment in the city, and I continued taking photographs while Robert worked his way up the corporate ladder. We'd stay up late talking about our dreams, his corner office, my gallery, the children we'd have someday, the house with the big backyard. But then Robert's career started demanding more. Longer hours. Constant travel. Weekend conferences. Important clients who needed entertaining. "Jen," he said one evening, exhaustion evident in his voice, "I need you to understand this is temporary. Just a few years of grinding, and then we'll have everything we've ever wanted." "I understand," I told him, because I did. I was his wife. Supporting him was what I was supposed to do. So I started saying no to photography gigs that conflicted with his schedule. I turned down a gallery showing in Chicago because he had an important dinner that same weekend and needed me there. I stopped staying late in my darkroom because someone had to make sure there was food in the house, that his clothes were clean, that life at home ran smoothly while he conquered the corporate world. "It's just temporary," I whispered to myself as I packed away my camera equipment to make room for his home office. "Just until he's more established," but temporary became permanent so gradually that I didn't even notice. By year 5, I wasn't taking photographs anymore. I was Robert's wife, the woman who kept his life organized, who remembered his mother's birthday, who made small talk with his colleagues' spouses at company events. By year 10, I had forgotten what my dreams even looked like. "You're so lucky," other wives would tell me at those corporate dinners. "Robert is going places. You must be so proud," and I was proud. I was proud of the corner office he finally earned. Proud of the 6-figure salary. Proud of the beautiful house we bought in the suburbs, the one with the big backyard we'd dreamed about. I just didn't realize that somewhere along the way, I had traded my dreams for his. Our house became my entire world. I chose every piece of furniture with care, spent weeks picking the perfect paint colors, filled the walls with photographs, not ones I'd taken professionally, but family pictures. Robert and me on vacation. Robert receiving an award. Robert, when had I disappeared from my own life? I woke up every morning at 6 to make his breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh squeezed orange juice because he'd read somewhere that executives who ate proper breakfasts performed better. I ironed his shirts while he showered, making sure the collar was crisp, the cuffs perfect. I packed his lunch in the leather bag I'd given him for his 40th birthday. "Thanks, Jen," he'd say, kissing my cheek on his way out the door. The same quick peck, the same distracted tone, the same routine we'd followed for so many years that it had stopped feeling like affection and started feeling like obligation. At night, I'd have dinner ready when he came home. I'd learned to time it perfectly, the chicken still juicy, the vegetables still crisp, everything at the exact temperature he preferred. We'd eat together, and I'd ask about his day. "Busy," he'd say. "Always busy. We're working on this new account. It's going to be huge if we land it. That's wonderful, honey. How was your day?" "Good. I reorganized the garage. Fixed the dripping faucet in the guest bathroom. Called your mother, she says hi. That's nice," and that was it. The sum total of our conversations. His ambitions. My maintenance of the life that supported those ambitions. Sometimes, late at night when he was already asleep beside me, I'd lie awake and wonder when we'd stopped really talking. When had we stopped discussing dreams and started only discussing logistics? When had I become so small in my own life, but I'd push those thoughts away, tell myself I was being ungrateful. Look at everything we had. The house. The financial security. The comfortable life. Wasn't that enough? My camera sat in the hall closet, buried under winter coats and boxes of holiday decorations. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of the case and feel something twist in my chest, a ghost of the woman I used to be, the artist who once believed she had something important to say through her lens. "Maybe I'll start taking pictures again," I mentioned to Robert one evening during year 15. He looked up from his laptop, distracted. "That's a nice hobby, Jen. You should do that. A hobby? My art, my passion, my identity reduced to a hobby," but I smiled and said, "Maybe I will." I never did. Instead, I filled my days with maintaining the life Robert had built. I joined the neighborhood book club, volunteered at the local food bank, took up gardening. I found ways to matter in a world where I no longer mattered to myself. The women at book club would complain about their husbands' little annoyances, harmless grievances. "Mine never puts the toilet seat down. Mine watches too much football. Mine forgot our anniversary again." I'd smile and nod, but I never complained about Robert. What would I even say? That he was a good provider? That he never hit me, never yelled, never did anything overtly wrong? That my marriage was perfectly fine except for the fact that I felt like I was slowly disappearing? How do you explain to someone that you're dying inside a perfectly respectable life? Year 18 brought a moment of crisis I didn't see coming. I was in the bathroom one morning, getting ready to go to the grocery store, when I caught sight of myself in the mirror. Really saw myself for the first time in years. When had the lines around my eyes gotten so deep? When had my hair turned more gray than brown? When had I started looking old? I stared at my reflection, this 53-year-old woman in comfortable jeans and a plain sweater, and couldn't remember the last time I'd felt beautiful. The last time Robert had looked at me with desire instead of distant affection. "You're being silly," I told my reflection. "This is what marriage looks like after 20 years. This is normal," but normal felt like suffocation. Year 19 was when things started to change. Though I didn't recognize it at the time, Robert joined a gym. "I need to get in shape," he announced one evening. "Too many business lunches. I'm not as young as I used to be." I encouraged him, because that's what supportive wives do. "That's great, honey. I'm proud of you for taking care of your health." He started going every morning before work, then again in the evenings. 5 days a week became 6, then 7. He bought new workout clothes, expensive ones, name brands I'd never heard of. "You look good," I told him one evening as he emerged from the bedroom in one of his new designer athletic outfits. And he did. Trimmer, more energetic, more alive than I'd seen him in years. Thanks, he said, but he didn't look at me when he said it. He was checking his phone, his attention already somewhere else. Then came the hair dye. I noticed it one morning, the gray at his temples suddenly gone, replaced with the dark brown I remembered from our early years together. You colored your hair, I said, surprised. Yeah. Just trying something different. What do you think? It looks nice, but inside, something uncomfortable stirred. Why was he suddenly so concerned with his appearance? We were in our 50s. Wasn't this the time when you were supposed to grow comfortable with aging together? New clothes started appearing in his closet. Not the department store business casual he'd worn for years, but designer labels. Fitted shirts. Expensive shoes. Cologne I didn't recognize. You're really investing in yourself, I commented one evening, trying to keep my tone light. Supportive. Image matters in business, he replied. Especially when you're dealing with younger executives. You have to show you can keep up. It made sense. Of course it made sense. So why did my stomach hurt every time he checked his phone and smiled at the screen? The late nights became more frequent. Big project at work. Client dinner ran long. Got caught up in a meeting. I'd heat up his dinner in the microwave, watching as he ate quickly, distracted, barely tasting the food I'd spent an hour preparing. How was your evening? I'd ask, fine. Exhausting. I'm going to head to bed, and he would, leaving me alone in the kitchen, staring at his half-eaten dinner and wondering when we'd stop being partners and started being roommates, but I pushed the doubts away. I was being paranoid. Robert was a good man. He worked hard. He provided for us. He'd never given me reason not to trust him. The problem, I told myself, was me. I was feeling insecure about getting older. I was projecting my own fears onto his perfectly innocent behavior. You need to trust your husband, I whispered to myself late at night when I couldn't sleep. Stop looking for problems where there aren't any. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I knew something had shifted. The man sleeping beside me felt like a stranger. And I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, invisible even to myself. I just didn't know yet that I was right to be afraid, that the late nights and new clothes and mysterious texts weren't about keeping up with younger executives, they were about a younger woman. Her name was Amber, and she was 28 years old. And for 6 months, she had been sharing intimacy with my husband while I made his breakfast and ironed his shirts and maintained the perfect home life he came back to between betrayals. But I wouldn't learn that until year 20, the year everything shattered, the year the perfect facade finally cracked and revealed the rot underneath. The text messages started 6 months before the night that would destroy everything. I wasn't snooping, not at first. I was simply doing what I'd always done, managing our shared life. Robert had asked me to check his phone for an email confirmation about a flight he'd booked. His phone was on the kitchen counter, and he was in the shower. Can you check if the Delta confirmation came through? He'd called out. Passcode is your birthday. It had always been my birthday. For 20 years, his passcode had been my birthday, and somehow that small gesture had made me feel loved. Connected. Important. I picked up his phone, entered the numbers, and watched the screen unlock. That's when I saw it. The notification on the lock screen, already fading but still visible for a split second before it disappeared. Amber, can't wait to see you tonight. I've been thinking about your hands on me all day. My breath caught. The phone nearly slipped from my hands. I stared at the screen, waiting for my brain to make sense of what I'd just read. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a joke from a colleague. Maybe I'd misread it. Maybe did you find it? Robert called from the bathroom. My hands were shaking. Yeah. Still loading. I opened his email app with trembling fingers, found the Delta confirmation, screenshot it, and sent it to myself. Then, before I could stop myself, before I could talk myself out of it, I opened his messages, and there she was. Amber, dozens of messages. Hundreds maybe. Scrolling back weeks, months. Amber, last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you, Robert, same here. You make me feel alive again. Amber, when can I see you? I miss your body, Robert, tomorrow. I'll tell Jennifer I have a late meeting. The bathroom door opened. I barely had time to close the messages and pull up the email before Robert walked out, towel around his waist, hair still dripping. "Find it?" he asked, smiling at me like everything was normal. Like he hadn't just destroyed our entire marriage with messages I wasn't supposed to see. "Yeah," I managed to say, my voice sounding strange and distant even to my own ears. "It's confirmed. You leave Thursday at 6 a.m. Perfect." He took the phone from my hand, his fingers brushing mine. The same hands that had been on her body. "Thanks, babe. He still called me babe while texting another woman about how she made him feel alive. I went through the rest of that day in a fog. Made lunch. Folded laundry. Pretended everything was fine while my world tilted on its axis. That night, after Robert fell asleep beside me easily, peacefully, like a man with nothing to hide, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying those messages in my mind. "You make me feel alive again. Again." As if he'd been dead. As if 20 years with me had been a slow burial and she was his resurrection. I wanted to wake him up, to scream, to demand answers. But something stopped me. Some instinct for self-preservation whispered, "Wait. Watch. Gather evidence," because confronting him now, with just a glimpse of text messages, would give him the chance to explain it away, to gaslight me, to make me doubt what I'd seen. So I waited, and I watched. Over the next weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize, a detective in my own marriage. When Robert showered, I'd check his phone. When he left for work, I'd go through his pockets, his wallet, his car. What I found made me sick: credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel receipts folded and hidden in his gym bag. A second phone, a cheap prepaid one, tucked in the glove compartment of his car. I turned it on one afternoon while he was at work, my hands shaking so badly I could barely press the buttons. More messages. More proof. "Amber, I love you. Leave her. Be with me, Robert, I want to. I'm working on it. These things take time, Amber, how much more time? I'm tired of being your secret, Robert. Soon, baby. I promise. I just need to figure out the finances. The finances." That phrase lodged in my chest like a blade. He wasn't just having an affair. He was planning to leave me. And he was figuring out how to do it in a way that protected his money. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it, went inside the house, and vomited in the kitchen sink. 20 years. 2 decades of my life. And he was figuring out the finances of how to discard me. That's when the real investigation began. I started going through our financial records with the kind of attention to detail I hadn't applied to anything in years. Bank statements. Investment accounts. Retirement funds. The mortgage. Everything, and what I discovered made the affair seem almost innocent by comparison. Robert had been moving money. Quietly, methodically, for at least a year, maybe longer. Our joint savings account, which should have had close to $200,000, was down to $73,000. The rest had been transferred in increments small enough not to trigger my attention. $5,000 here, $10,000 there, $20,000 the month before. Where had it gone? I found the answer in paperwork hidden in his office filing cabinet, buried under tax returns from a decade ago. A new investment account. Opened 18 months ago. Only his name on it. Current balance, $147,000, our money. The money we'd saved together, built together, sacrificed for together. He'd been systematically stealing it, moving it where I couldn't access it, preparing for the day he'd walk out and leave me with almost nothing. I sat on the floor of his office, papers scattered around me, and something inside me transformed. The hurt and betrayal crystallized into something harder, colder. Rage, not the hot, explosive kind that makes you throw things and scream. The calculating kind. The kind that plans. The kind that waits for the perfect moment to strike. Robert thought I was naive. Thought I was the same woman who'd given up her career to support his. Thought I'd spent the last 20 years ironing his shirts and making his dinner without developing a brain of my own. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. It happened on a Tuesday, March 14th, to be exact. The date is burned into my memory the way trauma brands itself onto your soul, permanent, unavoidable, impossible to forget. Robert came home from work at his usual time, 6:30. I had dinner ready, pot roast with roasted vegetables, his favorite. I'd spent 3 hours preparing it, the way I'd spent 3 hours preparing countless dinners over 20 years, but this time was different. This time, I knew what was coming. I'd seen the text message that morning while he was in the shower. Tonight. We need to talk. It's time. He'd responded. I know. I'll tell her tonight. So I made his favorite meal. Set the table with our good dishes. Lit candles. Put on the dress he'd once said he loved, though he hadn't complimented me in it for at least 5 years. I was going to make him look me in the eye when he destroyed me. Smells amazing, he said when he walked in, loosening his tie. But he didn't meet my gaze. Didn't kiss me hello. Just headed straight for the living room and sat down on the couch, not the dining room. The living room. My stomach dropped. He wasn't even going to give me the courtesy of dinner first, Robert? I stood in the doorway, still holding the serving spoon I'd been using to plate the vegetables. Dinner's ready, Jen, we need to talk first. Can you sit down? The walls of our living room, the room I'd decorated with such care, filled with photographs of our life together, seemed to close in on me. I walked slowly to the armchair across from him, sat down, and folded my hands in my lap. 20 years of marriage, and I could feel it ending in the space between us. What is it? I asked, even though I already knew. He ran his hands through his dyed hair, avoiding my eyes. This isn't easy for me to say. Then maybe you shouldn't say it. He looked up at me then, surprised. I never challenged him. Never pushed back. For 20 years, I'd been agreeable, understanding, supportive, but that woman was already gone. And Jennifer, he started, and the use of my full name instead of Jen or Jenny told me everything. I don't know how to say this gently, so I'm just going to be honest. I don't feel anything for you anymore. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire that had been burning for months without me noticing. What does that mean? My voice was steady. Eerily calm. It means exactly what it sounds like. I've been unhappy for a long time. We've been going through the motions, Jen. You have to have felt it too. So this is my fault? The question came out sharper than I intended. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we've grown apart. It happens. People change. What we had when we were younger, it's just not there anymore. What we had when we were younger, I repeated slowly, was a wife who gave up her entire career to support your dreams. What we had was me building a home while you built an empire. What we had was me being so devoted to your happiness that I forgot to have my own life. He looked uncomfortable. Good, I appreciate everything you've done, he said, and the patronizing tone made my blood boil. But appreciation isn't love. And I can't stay in a marriage where I feel dead inside, dead inside. I let out a laugh that sounded nothing like joy. When exactly did you start feeling dead, Robert? Before or after you started screwing Amber? His face went white. Then red. The color drained and flooded back so fast I might have found it funny if my entire world wasn't collapsing. How did I find out? I leaned forward. I'm not as stupid as you thought I was. I saw the messages. Found the hotel receipts. Discovered the secret phone. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Or did you just stop caring whether I did? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Jen, I didn't want you to find out like this. How did you want me to find out? Were you planning to introduce us? Jennifer, this is Amber, the woman I've been having an affair with for 6 months while you made my breakfast and ironed my shirts. It's been longer than 6 months, he said quietly. The admission hit me harder than I expected, even though I'd suspected. How long? A year. Almost a year. 365 days of lies. Of coming home to me after being with her. Of letting me touch him, kiss him, sleep beside him while he was thinking of someone else. Her name is Amber, he continued, as if I needed the confirmation. She's 28. She works in marketing. We met at a company conference. 28. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. She's younger than our marriage. She makes me feel young again. She makes me feel alive, Jen. She understands me in ways you never have. What the hell does that mean? I've known you for 20 years. I've supported every dream, every goal, every ambition. What could she possibly understand that I don't? She sees me for who I am now, not who I used to be. She doesn't expect me to be the same person I was 2 decades ago. No, she expects you to be her sugar daddy. Did you tell her about the $147,000 you stole from our joint account? Another flash of shock across his face. He hadn't expected me to know about that either. I didn't steal anything. That's my money too, money we saved together. Money from years when I could have been building my own career instead of supporting yours. You moved it into a secret account with only your name on it. That's called theft, Robert. That's called planning to screw me over. He stood up, pacing now. I want a divorce. Amber and I want to start fresh. She's given me an ultimatum: either I leave you by the end of the year, or she's done. Oh, well, if Amber gave you an ultimatum. I stood too, fury rising in my chest. God forbid you disappoint your 28-year-old girlfriend. Never mind the wife who sacrificed everything for you. Don't make this harder than it has to be. We can do this amicably. We can split everything down the middle and both walk away with our dignity intact. Down the middle? After you've spent a year hiding assets? After you've been planning this exit strategy while pretending everything was fine? Jennifer, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm being more reasonable than you deserve. You want a divorce? Fine. You'll get one. But it's going to be on my terms, not yours. What does that mean? I walked past him toward the kitchen, my heart pounding but my head clearer than it had been in months. It means you should call a lawyer. A good one. Because I'm about to make this the most expensive mistake of your life. I heard him following me. Jen, come on. We're adults. We can handle this maturely. I spun around to face him. Maturely? You want to talk about maturity? You've been lying to me for a year. Stealing from me. Planning to leave me destitute while you run off with a girl young enough to be our daughter. And now you want me to be mature about it? I never planned to leave you destitute. That's not fair. You know what's not fair, Robert? That I gave you the best years of my life. That I put your career ahead of mine. That I turned myself into whatever you needed me to be. And the moment I start showing signs of age, the moment I'm not young and fresh anymore, you trade me in for a newer model. That it's not about your age bullshit. It's entirely about my age. You dyed your hair. Joined a gym. Started dressing like a man half your age. Because you're terrified of getting old. And I'm a reminder that you are old. That we both are. So you found someone who makes you forget that. He had no response to that. We stood there in my kitchen, in the house I'd made a home, staring at each other like the strangers we'd apparently become. I'll stay at a hotel tonight, he said finally. Give us both some space. Don't bother. I'm sure Amber has room for you. He flinched. It doesn't have to be like this. You made it like this the moment you touched her. Now get out, this is my house too, then I'll leave. I grabbed my purse from the counter, my car keys. Enjoy your pot roast. I hope it chokes you. I walked out of my own home, got in my car, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. Didn't care. I just needed to be anywhere but there, anywhere I couldn't smell the dinner I'd made for a man who'd been planning to abandon me. I ended up at a 24-hour diner 30 minutes away, sitting in a booth in the back, staring at a cup of coffee I couldn't drink. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert, "Where are you? We should talk about this more calmly." I turned the phone off. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes and tired feet, refilled my coffee without asking. You okay, honey? My husband is leaving me for a 28-year-old, she winced. Men are idiots, yes, there, you got a lawyer? Not yet, get one. Best one you can afford. Take him for everything he's got. I looked up at her, surprised by the ferocity in her voice. She shrugged. Happened to me 20 years ago. I was stupid. I let him sweet-talk me into accepting way less than I deserved because I didn't want to make things ugly. Biggest mistake of my life. Don't be like me. Fight for what's yours, I nodded slowly. I will. And I meant it. The next morning, I woke up in a Holiday Inn with a splitting headache and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I checked my phone. 17 missed calls from Robert. 12 text messages ranging from apologetic to angry to pleading. I deleted them all without reading most of them. Then I called my sister, Diana, the only person I could trust completely. Hello? Her voice was groggy. I'd woken her up. He's leaving me for a 28-year-old named Amber. Silence. Then, I'll kill him, despite everything, I laughed. Get in line. Where are you? Holiday Inn off Route 9. Stay there. I'm coming to you. Don't make any decisions until I get there. Diana arrived 2 hours later with coffee, bagels, and the name of the best divorce attorney in the state, Patricia Brennan, she said, handing me a business card. She's a shark. Expensive as hell, but worth every penny. She specializes in cases where husbands try to hide assets. How do you know her? Friend of a friend went through a nasty divorce last year. Her ex tried to claim poverty while hiding money in offshore accounts. Patricia found every penny and made sure her client got what she deserved. I looked at the card. Patricia Brennan, Esquire. Family law. The address was downtown, in one of those glass office buildings where successful people worked. I can't afford her. Robert controls most of our money. Mom's inheritance, Diana said quietly. I looked at her sharply. That's your inheritance too, and I'm choosing to invest it in making sure our piece of shit brother-in-law doesn't rob you blind. Mom would approve. Our mother had passed away 3 years ago, leaving Diana and me a modest inheritance, $50,000 each. I'd put mine in a separate account, something Robert didn't even know existed. I'd kept it secret not because I was hiding it, but because it was the only thing in my life that was completely mine. Now it was going to save me. Call her, Diana urged. Today. Don't wait. I called from the hotel room. Patricia Brennan's receptionist put me through immediately when I mentioned it was regarding divorce with suspected hidden assets. Mrs. Hutchinson, Patricia's voice was crisp, professional, no nonsense. Tell me what's going on. Told her everything. The affair. The hidden money. The secret phone. The year of planning behind my back. She listened without interrupting, and I could hear her typing notes. Do you have evidence of the affair? She asked when I finished. Screenshots of text messages. Hotel receipts. Credit card statements. Good. What about the financial records, copies of bank statements showing the transfers? Documentation of the secret investment account. Even better. Mrs. Hutchinson, what your husband has done is called financial infidelity. It's surprisingly common, and judges absolutely hate it. Every penny he moved without your knowledge can be traced and recovered. More than that, it demonstrates intent to defraud you, which works heavily in your favor in asset division. What does that mean? It means instead of splitting things 50-50, the court may award you significantly more, sometimes up to 70% as a penalty for his deception. But I need you to be clear about what you want. Do you want revenge, or do you want to protect yourself financially? Both, she laughed, a sharp sound that told me she'd heard this answer before. Then we'll get along just fine. I need you to gather every document you can. Bank statements, tax returns, investment records, credit card bills, mortgage papers. Everything. Can you do that? I can access everything online. Do it now. Download it all. And Mrs. Hutchinson? Don't tell your husband you've hired me. Not yet. The element of surprise is our friend. I spent the rest of that day in the hotel room, logged into every financial account we had, downloading years of records. Diana sat beside me, organizing the files, creating a system. Look at this, she said, pointing to a statement from 3 years ago. He withdrew $20,000 in cash. Do you remember what that was for? I didn't. He said it was for a business investment. Did you ever see any return on that investment? I shook my head slowly. Diana's expression darkened. This has been going on longer than a year. He's been hiding money for at least 3 years. Maybe longer. The scope of the betrayal kept expanding. Every document we reviewed revealed another lie, another theft, another moment when he'd chosen to deceive me. By evening, we had everything organized. Years of financial records. Evidence of systematic deception. You know what this means? Diana asked quietly. What? He never loved you. Not really. You don't plan this kind of exit strategy for someone you love. This is the kind of thing you do to someone you see as an obstacle. The words should have hurt more than they did. But I'd already mourned the loss of Robert's love. Now I was just angry. Then he's about to find out that this obstacle fights back. My first meeting with Patricia Brennan happened 3 days later in her downtown office. She was nothing like I expected. In my mind, the best divorce attorney in the state would be some hard-faced woman in a severe suit. Instead, Patricia was in her early 50s, wearing a purple dress and heels, with warm brown eyes that seemed to see right through me. Jennifer, she said, shaking my hand firmly. Sit down. Let's talk about how we're going to win this, not handle this or get through this. Win this. I liked her immediately. She pulled out the documents I'd sent her, spread them across her massive desk. Your husband is an idiot. Excuse me, he's an idiot. Look at this. She pointed to a bank statement. He moved money from your joint account to his personal account using online banking. There's a digital trail for everything. He wasn't even smart about it. If he'd wanted to hide assets properly, he would have needed offshore accounts, shell companies, layers of protection. This is amateur hour.so. That's good for me, it's excellent for you. It shows intent to defraud without the sophistication to hide it properly. Any judge will see exactly what he was doing. Now, let's talk about the affair. She pulled out the screenshots I'd provided. Amber. 28. Works in marketing. They met at a conference. How long has this been going on? He says almost a year. But I think it might be longer. Doesn't matter. 1 day or 10 years, infidelity is infidelity. Some states are no fault only, but we're in a jurisdiction where marital misconduct can affect asset division. His affair, combined with the financial deception, makes him look very bad. What can I expect from all this? Patricia leaned back in her chair. Here's how this is going to play. Robert's going to come at us with a settlement offer. It'll seem reasonable on the surface, probably suggest a 50-50 split of assets, maybe even offer you the house. He'll frame it as being fair and generous, but he'll structure it so you get less liquid assets and more debt. The house sounds nice until you realize you can't afford the mortgage and property taxes on your own. Meanwhile, he'll keep the retirement accounts, the investments, the cash. You'll be house poor while he's actually wealthy. My stomach turned. That's exactly what he'll do, which is why we're not accepting any settlement offer he makes. We're going to court. We're going to present every receipt, every hidden account, every lie. And we're going to ask for 55% of all marital assets, including his retirement accounts and future earnings from bonuses. Can we do that? We can ask for it. And given his behavior, we'll probably get it. But Jennifer, I need to prepare you for something. What? This is going to get ugly. Robert is going to fight back. He'll try to make you look unstable, unreasonable, vindictive. His lawyer, and he'll get a good one, will paint you as a scorned wife trying to punish him for falling out of love. They'll twist the narrative to make him the victim. Let them try. There's something else. The affair. Amber. She's going to be part of this whether you want her to be or not. Are you prepared for that? I thought about it. About seeing her face, hearing her name in court documents, having her existence acknowledged as the thing that destroyed my marriage. Yes, I said finally. I'm prepared, Patricia smiled. Good. Because we're going to win this, Jennifer. By the time we're done, Robert is going to regret ever underestimating you. While Patricia prepared our legal case, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I went looking for my past. The storage unit was on the east side of town, one of those climate-controlled facilities where people keep the pieces of themselves they can't quite throw away. I'd rented it years ago when we'd downsized Robert's home office, supposedly to store old tax documents and files, but what I'd really stored there was my previous life. The key still worked. The door rolled up with a metallic screech, and there it was, a decade of my photography career packed into boxes and cases. My camera equipment. My portfolio. Prints from gallery shows. Awards I'd won. Reviews from critics who'd called my work revolutionary and deeply moving. I sat down on the concrete floor of that storage unit and cried. Not for Robert. Not for my marriage. But for the woman I'd been before I'd convinced myself that love meant disappearing. My hands shook as I opened my old portfolio case. The photographs inside took my breath away. I'd forgotten how good I was. Really good. These weren't just pretty pictures, they were art. Each image captured something raw and human, something that made you feel. A mother holding her newborn, exhaustion and joy warring on her face. An elderly man feeding pigeons in the park, loneliness etched into every line of his body. A young woman laughing in the rain, freedom captured in a single moment. When had I stopped believing I had something important to say? When had I let Robert convince me that my art was just a hobby? I pulled out my old Nikon, the camera I'd bought with my first major commission check, the one I'd used for every important shoot. It felt foreign in my hands now, heavier than I remembered, but also right. Like coming home. I spent 3 hours in that storage unit, going through every box, every print, every piece of equipment. And with each discovery, I felt something awakening inside me. Not the woman who'd spent 20 years making breakfast and ironing shirts. The woman who'd existed before that. The artist. The creator. The person who'd once believed her vision mattered. My phone rang. Diana, where are you? I've been calling for an hour. Storage unit. Looking at my old photography stuff, and I forgot how good I was. She was quiet for a moment. Are you going to start again? I don't know. Maybe. It's been so long. What if I've lost it? What if you haven't? What if you're even better now than you were then? You've lived more, experienced more. Maybe that's what your work needs. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about what she'd said. I'd spent 20 years supporting Robert's ambitions. What if I used this devastation as fuel for my own? That's when I remembered Daniel Frost. Daniel had been my mentor when I was starting out, an established photographer who'd taken me under his wing. He'd been the one to get my work into galleries, to introduce me to collectors, to tell me I had real talent when I was still doubting myself. We'd lost touch when I'd stopped photographing. Not because of any falling out, I just gradually stopped responding to his calls and emails as my life became entirely about Robert's needs. I wondered if he even remembered me. I pulled out my phone and searched for him online. His website came up immediately, Daniel Frost Photography. The gallery he ran was downtown, in the Arts District. His bio said he was divorced, living in the city, still actively shooting and exhibiting. Before I could talk myself out of it, I called the number listed, Frost Gallery. A woman's voice answered. Hi, I'm looking for Daniel Frost. Is he available? May I ask who's calling? Jennifer. Jennifer Hutchinson. He might remember me as Jennifer Warren. I used to photograph with him years ago. Hold please. Music played. My heart pounded. This was stupid. He wouldn't remember me. Too much time had passed. Jennifer Warren. Daniel's voice came through the line, warm and familiar, and I felt tears spring to my eyes. I wondered what happened to you. Your work was extraordinary, Daniel. My voice cracked. I'm sorry I disappeared. Life happens. But I have to say, I'm surprised to hear from you after 20 years? Almost. I stopped taking photographs when I got married. That's a tragedy. You had such a unique eye, Jennifer. The way you captured emotion in ordinary moments, it was rare. I've never forgotten your work. We talked for an hour. I told him about my marriage, about giving up photography, about the divorce. He listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions, making me feel heard in a way Robert never had. Can we meet? I asked finally. I'd love to see your gallery. Catch up properly. How about coffee first? Tomorrow, if you're free. There's a place near my gallery, Brewpoint on 5th Street. Say, 2 o'clock, I'll be there. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety about the divorce, but from something else entirely. Anticipation. Excitement. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, my life wasn't over. Maybe it was just beginning. Brewpoint was one of those trendy coffee shops with exposed brick and local art on the walls. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a latte I was too nervous to drink, and sat in a corner booth rehearsing what I'd say. Then Daniel walked in, and 20 years dissolved it. He'd aged well, silver hair, lines around his eyes that somehow made him more attractive, not less. He was dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, carrying a leather messenger bag over his shoulder. When he spotted me, his face lit up. "Jennifer. You look exactly the same, liar," I said, standing to hug him. "But thank you." We sat down, and the conversation flowed as easily as it had 2 decades ago. He told me about his divorce 5 years earlier, about building his gallery from nothing, about the artists he was currently representing. "But enough about me," he said, leaning forward. "Tell me why you stopped photographing. And don't say life happened. I want the real reason." I took a breath. My husband's career took off. Someone needed to hold our home life together. I convinced myself it was temporary, that I'd get back to it once things settled down. But they never settled down. And somehow 20 years passed. That's heartbreaking. The worst part is, I let it happen. Nobody forced me to give it up. I chose to make myself smaller so he could be bigger. Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. The gesture was so unexpected, so kind, that I felt tears threatening. "Then maybe it's time to remember who you were before you became someone's wife," he said. Those words hit me harder than anything Patricia had said, harder than any legal strategy. Because they weren't about revenge or justice. They were about reclaiming myself. "I don't even know if I still have it," I admitted. "It's been so long. Talent doesn't disappear. It goes dormant, waiting for the right moment to wake up. Jennifer, you are one of the most promising photographers I'd ever worked with. That doesn't just vanish because you took a break. A 20-year break. So? Georgia O'Keeffe didn't hit her stride until her 40s. Grandma Moses started painting in her 70s. There's no expiration date on creativity. We talked for 3 hours. About art, about divorce, about starting over at 55. When I mentioned I was in the middle of a difficult divorce, Daniel didn't probe for details. He just listened, offering the kind of understanding that comes from someone who's been through it. "You know what helped me after my divorce?" he said as we were leaving. "Creating again. Pouring all that pain and anger and grief into my work. It didn't make the divorce easier, but it made me remember that I was more than just someone's ex-husband." "I don't even know where to start." "Start by picking up your camera. Shoot anything. Everything. Don't worry about whether it's good. Just create. See what emerges." As we stood outside the coffee shop, Daniel pulled a business card from his wallet. "My personal number's on there. Call me anytime." "And Jennifer?" I meant what I said. "You're talented. Don't let what your husband did convince you otherwise." I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because of Daniel specifically, though he was charming and kind. But because for 3 hours, someone had seen me as an artist, not as Robert's wife or a divorce statistic or a 55-year-old woman past her prime. Someone had seen me. That night, I pulled out my old Nikon, loaded it with film. Yes, I still shot film sometimes, and went for a walk through my neighborhood. I photographed everything. Autumn leaves on the sidewalk. A child's abandoned bicycle. An elderly couple holding hands. Light filtering through tree branches. When I got the film developed a week later, I was shocked. The images were good. Really good. Raw and honest in a way my earlier work had sometimes lacked. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe suffering had depth to my vision. Robert's lawyer made first contact 2 weeks after our confrontation. His name was Martin Keller, and his opening settlement offer arrived via certified mail, a thick envelope full of legal documents that Patricia went through with surgical precision. "Exactly as I predicted," she said, sliding the papers across her desk to me. "He's offering you the house, 30% of his retirement account, and $20,000 in cash. That sounds almost reasonable?" "It's garbage. The house has a mortgage of $250,000 still on it." Property taxes are $12,000 a year. You'd be house poor within 6 months and forced to sell at a loss. Meanwhile, he keeps 70% of his retirement, which is worth over $800,000 plus all the liquid assets he's hidden. So we reject it. We don't just reject it. We counter with something that makes him choke on his coffee. Patricia drafted our response. We wanted 55% of all marital assets, including retirement accounts, investments, and the house. We wanted alimony, substantial alimony for 10 years or until I remarried. And we wanted him to pay my attorney fees. He'll never agree to this, I said, reading through our demands. He doesn't have to agree. That's what court is for. But this establishes our position. We're not the desperate wife begging for scraps. We're the wronged party demanding justice. Robert's response came within days. His lawyer called Patricia, furious, threatening to drag this out for years if we didn't be reasonable. Patricia's response was ice cold. My client has been more than reasonable for 20 years. Now it's your client's turn to face consequences. The discovery phase began. Both sides had to turn over financial records, communications, documentation of assets. Robert tried to claim he didn't have access to certain accounts. Patricia filed motions compelling him to produce everything. Meanwhile, I was served with interrogatories, written questions I had to answer under oath. They were designed to be humiliating. When did you first suspect your husband of infidelity? Did you contribute financially to the marriage? Are you currently employed? Have you engaged in any extramarital relationships? That last question made me laugh. When would I have had time for an affair? I'd been too busy being the perfect wife. Patricia helped me craft responses that were truthful but strategic. Yes, I'd suspected infidelity when I discovered suspicious texts. No, I hadn't been employed outside the home. I'd been managing our household and supporting my husband's career. No, I hadn't engaged in any affairs. Unlike some people, the process was exhausting. Every week brought new motions, new demands, new ways for Robert's lawyer to make my life difficult, but something interesting was happening. With each legal blow, with each attempt to paint me as an unreasonable gold digger, I felt stronger. Not weaker. Stronger, because I'd spent 20 years making myself smaller, and I was done with that. He wants to depose you, Patricia said during one of our weekly meetings. What does that mean? It means his lawyer gets to question you under oath. It's their chance to try to rattle you, catch you in inconsistencies, make you look bad for trial. When? Next month. And Jennifer? I need you to be prepared. They're going to ask about the affair. About Amber. They're going to try to make you emotional, to get you to say something they can use against you. I'll be ready, but I wasn't sure I would be. The thought of sitting across from Robert's lawyer, answering questions about my failed marriage while Robert watched, made me sick. That evening, I called Daniel. We'd been meeting regularly for coffee, and he'd been encouraging me to keep photographing. Bad day? He asked when he heard my voice. They want to depose me. Grill me about the divorce. When? For weeks. Then we have 4 weeks to make you strong enough to handle it. Let me take you on a shoot tomorrow. Nothing formal. Just you, me, and our cameras. Sometimes the best therapy is creating something beautiful. The next day, we spent 6 hours photographing in the city, old buildings, street scenes, people going about their lives. Daniel had this way of seeing beauty in ordinary moments, and being around him reminded me why I'd fallen in love with photography in the first place. You're good at this, he said as we reviewed images on the back of my camera. Better than you were 20 years ago. There's a maturity to your work now. A depth. Pain adds depth, I said verily. It does. But so does survival. These images, they're not just technically good. They're emotionally resonant. You're not just capturing what things look like. You're capturing what they feel like. When he looked at me, I saw something in his eyes that made my breath catch. Not pity. Not sympathy. Admiration. You're beautiful, he said softly. Not despite your age, but because of it. You've lived, Jennifer. You've experienced joy and pain and betrayal. It shows in your work. It shows in your eyes. That girl your husband left you for? She's a blank canvas. You're a masterpiece, and then he kissed me. It wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. It just happened standing on a city street corner with our cameras around our necks, the autumn sun casting long shadows. When we pulled apart, I was shaking. I'm sorry, Daniel started. That was, don't apologize. My voice came out breathless. Please don't apologize. You're going through a divorce. The timing is terrible, the timing is perfect. Robert broke our vows a year ago. I'm just finally catching up. We went back to his gallery. To his apartment above the gallery. And for the first time in 20 years, I felt desired. Not as someone's wife or someone's support system. As Jennifer. As a woman. As an artist. As myself. The deposition took place in Martin Keller's conference room, all glass and steel and expensive leather chairs designed to intimidate. Robert was there, sitting next to his lawyer, refusing to meet my eyes. He looked thinner than I remembered. Older. Good. Patricia sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on my arm. Remember, she whispered, short answers. Don't volunteer information. And if you need a break, just say so. Martin Keller was exactly the type of lawyer I'd expected. 50s, expensive suit, shark eyes. He smiled at me like we were old friends, which somehow made him more menacing. Mrs. Hutchinson, thank you for being here today. I'm going to ask you some questions about your marriage, and I need you to answer truthfully. I understand. How long were you married to Robert? 20 years. And during that time, were you employed? Not in the traditional sense. I managed our household. So you didn't contribute financially? Patricia cut in. Objection. Misleading. Household management is a financial contribution. I'll rephrase, Martin said smoothly. Did you earn income during your marriage? Not after the first 5 years. My husband's career required someone to manage our home life. Was that his idea or yours? It was a mutual decision based on practical needs. When did you first suspect your husband was having an affair? This was it. The question designed to make me emotional, to make me look like a paranoid wife. About 6 months before he confirmed it. I saw suspicious text messages on his phone. Did you confront him? No, why not? I wanted to gather more information first. So you were spying on your husband? I was protecting myself from a man who was systematically hiding assets and planning to leave me destitute. Martin's eyes narrowed. That's quite an accusation. Patricia slid a document across the table. It's not an accusation. It's documented fact. Those are records of funds transferred from joint accounts to accounts under only your client's name. Without Mrs. Hutchinson's knowledge or consent. Mrs. Hutchinson, Martin continued, ignoring Patricia, are you currently in a romantic relationship with anyone? My heart skipped. How did he know about Daniel? I'm dating someone, yes. How long has this relationship been going on? About 6 weeks. So while you're claiming to be the wrong party, you're already involved with another man. My involvement with another person began months after I discovered my husband's year-long affair. Unlike your client, I didn't start a new relationship while still pretending to be faithfully married. Robert shifted in his seat. Finally, some reaction. Is it true, Martin pressed, that this new relationship is with Daniel Frost, a photographer you worked with over 20 years ago? Yes. Isn't it convenient that you reconnected with an old friend right when your marriage was ending? Isn't it convenient that your client moved marital funds into hidden accounts right when he started an affair with a woman half his age? Patricia smiled slightly beside me. I was holding my own. The deposition continued for 3 more hours. Martin tried every angle, painting me as vengeful, as a gold digger, as someone who'd contributed nothing to the marriage. But Patricia had prepared me well, and I had something Martin didn't expect, confidence, because I wasn't the same woman who'd discovered those text messages 6 months ago. I wasn't the wife who'd spent 20 years shrinking herself. I was someone new. Someone stronger. When it finally ended, Robert followed me out into the hallway. Jenny, wait. I turned. Patricia stayed close, protective. What? This doesn't have to be so ugly. We can still settle this reasonably. You lost the right to ask me for anything reasonable when you spent a year planning how to screw me over financially while pretending everything was fine. I never wanted to hurt you. The laugh that came out of me was sharp. You just wanted to leave me with nothing. That's so much better. Amber and I were having problems. She's not who I thought she was, and there it is. I stepped closer. You're not here because you feel guilty. You're here because your 28-year-old girlfriend is already tired of you. What happened, Robert? Did she realize you're just a nearly 60-year-old man with dyed hair and a gym membership? Did she get bored of playing house with someone old enough to be her father? That's not fair. You know what's not fair? 20 years of my life wasted on a man who saw me as disposable. But here's the thing, Robert. You thought discarding me would destroy me. Instead, you freed me. I walked away, Patricia beside me, and didn't look back. The trial lasted 3 days. Patricia presented our case methodically: the hidden accounts, the affair, the systematic deception. She called Daniel as a witness, not about our relationship, but to testify about my professional abilities as a photographer, establishing that I'd given up a lucrative career to support Robert. Martin tried to paint me as vindictive. But the evidence spoke louder than his rhetoric. On the third day, the judge, a woman in her 60s named Judge Morrison, delivered her ruling. I've reviewed all the evidence, she said, looking directly at Robert. Mr. Hutchinson, your behavior throughout this marriage has been calculated and deceptive. You systematically hid assets from your wife while engaging in an extramarital affair. This court does not look kindly on such actions. My heart pounded. I'm awarding Mrs. Hutchinson 55% of all marital assets, including retirement accounts and investment portfolios. Additionally, Mr. Hutchinson will pay alimony of $5,000 per month for 8 years or until Mrs. Hutchinson remarries. He will also be responsible for all court costs and attorney fees. I felt Patricia squeeze my hand under the table. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, the marital home will be transferred entirely to Mrs. Hutchinson. Mr. Hutchinson will be responsible for half of the remaining mortgage payments for the next 5 years. I had one. Not just one. Dominated. Robert's face was ashen. Amber, sitting in the back of the courtroom, looked furious. As we left the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Apparently, someone had tipped them off about the case: the wronged wife of a corporate executive taking him for everything. Mrs. Hutchinson, how do you feel about the verdict? I paused, looked directly at the camera, and said, I feel like justice was served. For 20 years, I supported my husband's dreams. Today, the court recognized the value of that contribution. That night, Daniel tipped me to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. To new beginnings. 6 months later, Daniel offered me something I never expected: a show at his gallery. Your work deserves to be seen, he said. Women over 50 have been invisible in art for too long. Let's change that. I spent 3 months preparing. Photographed women in their 50s and 60s, women at coffee shops, in parks, at work, at home. Women who'd been told their value decreased with every passing year. Women who'd been made invisible by a society obsessed with youth. I called the exhibition after 20 years. Opening night was packed. Critics came. Collectors came. People who'd followed my story in the news came to see what I'd created from the ashes of my marriage, and in the back of the gallery, Robert came too. He stood there with Amber, looking older somehow. Defeated. She was on her phone, bored, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. He approached me near the end of the evening. Jennifer. This is remarkable, thank you. I didn't know you still had this in you. You never asked. He stood there awkwardly. Are you happy? I looked across the room at Daniel, who was speaking with a collector about one of my pieces. Thought about the life I was building now, one where I mattered, where my voice was heard, where my art had value. Yes, Robert. I am. He left shortly after. I heard through mutual friends that Amber left him 3 months later for someone younger. That he was alone now, dealing with the consequences of his choices. I didn't take pleasure in his pain. But I didn't feel sorry for him either. What I felt was free. Before I finish this story, I need to ask you something. If you've made it this far, if Jennifer's journey has touched you in any way, I need you to do 3 things. First, hit that like button. Second, share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's feeling invisible, someone who's sacrificing themselves for someone else's dreams. And third, subscribe to Voice of Auntie Katie, because we're building a community of people who refuse to disappear. Drop a comment telling me what would your after 20 years look like? What would you reclaim? The story could end there: woman gets betrayed, woman gets revenge, woman gets new love. But that's not where the real transformation happened. The real transformation happened every morning when I woke up and chose myself first. When I picked up my camera instead of Robert's dry cleaning. When I said no to things that didn't serve me and yes to opportunities that scared me. The real revenge wasn't the court settlement or watching Robert's relationship with Amber fall apart. It was becoming someone who no longer needed his regret to feel whole. At 55, I'm not the woman I was at 35. I'm better. I'm wiser. I've earned every line on my face, every gray hair, every moment of hard-won self-knowledge. My exhibition at Daniel's Gallery led to more shows. My work is now in permanent collections. I've been featured in photography magazines, invited to speak at workshops, asked to mentor young artists. Daniel and I are still together. We have separate apartments. We're both too old to rush into cohabitation, but we see each other almost daily. He doesn't complete me because I'm already complete. He just enhances my life. Sometimes young women ask me how I survived such devastating betrayal. How I came back from being discarded after 20 years. I tell them the truth: I survived by refusing to believe that my value was tied to someone else's ability to see it. I came back by remembering that I existed before him, and I would exist after him. The woman he fell in love with was always there. She was just buried under years of making herself smaller to make him feel bigger. This is my story. Not a story of a woman destroyed by betrayal, but a woman reconstructed by her own hands, her own vision, her own refusal to disappear. And if that's not the sweetest revenge, I don't know what is. Listen to me carefully, because this is important. You are never too old to reclaim yourself. You are never too late to choose your own happiness. You are never invisible, no matter who fails to see you. If you're 55 or 25 or 75 and you're reading this thinking your best years are behind you, you're wrong. Your best years are the ones where you finally choose yourself. Where you stop shrinking. Where you stop apologizing for taking up space. Robert thought he was discarding damaged goods. Instead, he freed a masterpiece. This is Voice of Auntie Katie, where every story carries a lesson. If this resonated with you, if you felt Jennifer's pain and celebrated her victory, share it. Like it. Subscribe. Leave a comment telling me your story, because we all have one. And remember, the strongest love is the one you have for yourself. Everything else when it comes should just be a compliment, never the center. Now go reclaim your life. It's waiting for you. Until next time, this is Auntie Katie. Stay strong. Stay fierce. And never, ever let anyone make you invisible.